Yes, this joint from 1991 finds us in New York's five boroughs, with Wesley Snipes taking the role of architect and professional weird name haver Flipper Purify.
Named after a dolphin.
Yes.
It's the Florida connection, I've just realised. Flipper from Florida.
Yeah, it's Miami Dolphins, right? So, yeah, they'd be successful this time, probably. I don't know. Yes, he's angling for promotion at the firm his work has made successful. He's assigned a new temp worker, Annabelle Scoria's Angie Tucci. He'd been angling for an African-American co-worker, but this one example of his supposed underappreciation has much wider ramifications than may be expected. Before long, he's embarked on an affair with Angie, soon to be found out by his wife, Loretta McKee's Drew, leading to their breakup, and it also causes Angie problems, both with her racist father and her now ex-boyfriend, John Turturro's Polly. Further family drama from the Purify side of things come from Flipper's ex-preacher father, played by Ossie Davis, and Samuel L. Jackson's crack-addicted elder brother, with everything getting rather messy over the months that this film covers. Now, there's a lot presented in Jungle Fever, but rather like the lives of the leads, it's messy and unfocused. It touches on racism, systemic and overtly personal, sexism, wider problems of drug addiction, wider social concerns, and just about anything that can affect any relationship. What it doesn't do is build anything resembling a narrative out of any of it. So, while there's nothing disagreeable here, and indeed there's a number of fine performances, of which Snipes more than holds his own, but it does rather reduce to being a bunch of stuff that happens without much meaning. Unless, of course, you somehow haven't already come to the conclusion that racism, drug addiction and cheating are bad things. Now, as we discussed a few times recently, I applaud the representation of these things, particularly for African-American cinema, but I'm not 100% sure it's doing a lot for me. However, it's not a film that's really for me, so perhaps my opinion on that side of things isn't relevant. I feel we're on serious ground covering some other aspects. If this wasn't Spike Lee behind the camera, there's moments here I call outright technically incompetent, but I think he's proven himself enough to say that they're failed experiments instead. You know, things like shooting a boardroom meeting early on as though it's taking place in a roundabout, or
that bothered me too. I have a particular dislike for revolving cameras for no reason. That one was particularly dizzying.
It's like they're just sitting at a desk talking. You don't need to circle them as though you're a nutbag. Or it's that weird shot he's doing when people are supposedly just walking and talking down a street, but they're clearly being pulled along on a dolly, so it just looks like they're floating.
Yeah, it happens a couple of times. It happens at the beginning, and then it happens later on with Spike Lee's character Cyrus too. And it's so strange. Yeah, it's just a little thing that kind of pulls you out of it. The underscoring in the soundtrack was stomping all over the dialogue, and there's that final shot which I thought had walked in from a Mel Brooks parody. Now, it's not a bad film exactly, but everyone involved, both in front and behind of the camera, has done much better work. Yeah, as I say, focusing it purely on Wesley Snipes, it's a really good performance. Very charismatic, even though he's playing a character that has many flaws. But as a kind of as a film, it's just a bit messy. It's not bad, but it just got the end of it and went, okay, that was a thing that I watched, and it didn't really cohere into anything for me. Yeah. Remind me of the final scene, Scott.
I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a dream or not, but he wakes up like a few years later, as you're concerned, and he goes down and he's approached by what is apparently supposed to be his grown-up kid, saying, "I'm on crack, and I'm now a hooker," and he goes, "No!" Yes, I thought he's Darth Vader or something.
Was that? Yeah, I think the problem I was like, was that just someone saying that? Because it's very similar to what Halle Berry's character had said to him earlier in the film. And he's like worried about that for his daughter, or was it actually meant to be his daughter and he's sort of dreaming it? It's an odd scene. It doesn't really add anything. It's
an open question, and I don't care enough to make an answer for it.
It sounds like I enjoyed this more than you, but as has been the case with other films, I have pretty much exactly the same feeling about it, just enjoyed it more. It's happened either way. A couple of episodes recently, actually.
Yeah, I don't want to say that I particularly didn't enjoy it. It bobs along well enough. It was just, again, I got to the end of it and was like, okay, that was a thing that you've put there, and I couldn't make any more out of it. And that's the sort of thing when you actually need to try and write notes against it, it becomes kind of apparent that I don't really have a through line to go through here, because I don't think there is one. It's just a film that's there, which is cool and all, but yeah.
I mean, I think everything is done well enough that you couldn't call anything technically bad, like you mentioned earlier, Scott. It's more just, I think, failed experiment. It didn't add anything. I mean, it's 1991. It's a couple of years after Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty early in Spike Lee's career, and he's just, again, not so much finding his feet, just exploring things and finding a style. Yeah. A lot of his later films are much more conventional.
Yeah.
Often better for it, but yeah, so that doesn't bother me so much. So I know how good a film Spike Lee is. How good a filmmaker Spike Lee is. That I know that. That's probably why. And yeah, I do come back to what you said of like sort of a collection of things that happen that don't seem to have an awful lot to do with each other for the most part. It almost feels like a series of sketches or vignettes.
Yeah.
Which only exists to put forward a point or point of view or propose an idea to make the audience think.
Yeah.
And only connects together in the loosest way in terms of what happens to the characters in the film.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a very valid criticism. It's just, it didn't bother me as much as such a thing often might. Probably a lot is to do with the fact that it's really good quality acting in it.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference. And there are little moments too that I love. You're talking about one of those scenes when they're almost dreamlike being pulled down the street in some sort of trolley or something. And it's the scene where your dolphin fella, because Flipper, stupid name, Flipper's talking to Cyrus and like he's saying, why have how did Drew find out? How did she find out that I was cheating on her? And the look on Spike Lee's face is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. He's one step away from sort of whistling insouciantly. It's like, I don't know. Look over there. And that really amused me. So there's certainly some humour in it. And so the relationship stuff at least has a through thread, even though, for instance, the scene with Drew and her friends talking about like different degrees of black and the problems that they see with black men and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it happens a bit in everything, but all it's earlier is a far more cohesive film in that sort of regard. The sort of Spike Lee, this angry young black man, and that's the key word really, is the black bit. The way he's seeing people with his same colour treated in the country he lives in and how they're treated. That it's a lot of it just feels like polemic, just sort of raging, and it's legitimate, but it doesn't necessarily make for a good narrative, or in this case, absolutely does not make for a good narrative.
Yeah, so there's a lot of author insertion going on here. Most of the characters appear to just basically be Spike Lee's viewpoints in different ways. Yeah.
At the same time, the fact that the acting is so good, and there's a lot of other like technically good things about the film too that I think is why that doesn't become the problem it might.
Yeah.
And again, Wesley Snipes is great in it, front and centre. There's a few other people I'd like... before we move on, just what I was going to say is, in terms of the narrative though, and nothing really coheres, but for the most part, the whole Gator, Samuel L. Jackson storyline almost seems to be taking place outside of this film.
Yeah, it almost leads into New Jack City, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Also, that does lead to seeing Eddie Murphy's big brother, which was strange because this guy looks so like Eddie Murphy and he sounds so like Eddie Murphy, but I know it's not Eddie Murphy. Impersonator or something? No, Eddie Murphy's brother, that explains that. But it's it's a good film. It's just it's barely a film. It's the real problem with it. It's sort of a bunch of sketches stuck together, but I still enjoyed it, and I actually quite like to see John Turturro in this. He's almost like the exact opposite of his character in Do the Right Thing. Yeah. And that's quite nice to see too. The only other thing I have to say about it, and it's my single real criticism, and you've mentioned it already, but it did sort of drive me crazy at one point, was the overscoring, or technically I think you should probably call it over sound tracking. which was egregious. It's one of 2 films in this batch where that was a big problem for me, although this is very much the worst of them, the worst of the 2. And it's because I think every single scene has music playing, and it's almost always too loud and quite often not necessary. There's I think in particular the scene that bothered me is when Drew and it's so hard to make myself say Flipper Scott, which is a stupid name. Also reminded me of somebody from our high school with that name, or at least it was a nickname. It's not clear whether that's the case here. The scene where Drew and Flipper are in the back room of Bloomingdale's where she works, and they're trying to talk about their relationship and stuff, and the music just seemed to be getting louder and louder, and just let them talk. It's like really, really important stuff, and it's that, if anything, that really belies how early in his career I think Spike Lee is. You've already got the problem of author insertion and sort of it being kind of polemical, and now you're trying to dictate mood really heavily with music, and it's too much. But again, it's 1991, it's one of Spike Lee's first films, and he would very much go on to get better, so in hindsight, he gets a pass on a lot of it, because I know he's going to get better, rather than like crying him out as being terrible or anything like that. But it's a pretty egregious, well, it sounds more like a mastering error than almost anything that was intentional. It just seemed far too loud for it was stomping over the dialogue. I had real trouble making out what people were saying at points, and that's not really what you want from any kind of communication medium. Also, kind of a meta thing about the film, but kudos to whoever designed the poster for this. I do love the poster. Black and white fingers intertwined to look kind of like tiger stripes to mirror the jungle fever idea. Oh yeah. It's a really clever poster. I really like that. Yeah. We're probably done with that one though. Yeah.